Hey, I want to talk to you about a special topic today. One that has always held a special place in my heart from the time I was a wee little lad to now, where I'm pursuing a career in design and potentially because of this one thing, and that is motorcycles. See, in our current context, or as my current context, I live in the United States, and when someone says motorcycles, we think of a Harley Davidson. And while yes, people say that is the embodiment of freedom, I don't think so. See, there is this one man, one of my great influences in my design practice, one that really understands what a motorcycle can mean to you, but not just at a surface level. See, a lot of people think that the reason to get a motorcycle is because of the styling or because you can go fast, which, hey, you can do both, and it's great. But there's something that a motorcycle offers you that not even a car can, and that is a sense of freedom. And this designer, his name, Shinya Kimura, really knows and implements this notion of freedom and harmony in the whole design process when he makes a motorcycle. And I want to really touch into that today. So strap up and let's get ready to ride. Let's go back and look at Shinya Kimura's past. Originally born in Japan, he did eventually move to Los Angeles where his current shop is located. But before that, I think it's important to touch upon his influential figures. Two people specifically. One being his mother and the other being his father. And I think it's important to really touch upon this because of what they did. His father was a poet and also owned a rivet factory in Japan. See, the poetry and the rivet factory was one of the inspirations that kind of eventually led to Kimura's idea of flow and harmony. See, in poetry, every word needs to harmonize with the next. And in order for a poem to be a, concise whole, it needs to be able to flow, uninterrupted, almost like a song. And a song being a form of poetry. But not only that, but the rivet factory that Shinya really grew up in and around was a way of, getting that love for machinery. He very vividly remembers the sound of machine at work and also the smell of oil. One that he has grown to really love and partially why he now works with motorcycles. His mother was a calligrapher. And same thing applies to calligraphy. Each brushstroke needs to harmonize and flow in order to go to the next. You always have to think one step ahead. How does one brushstroke lead to the next one? And I think this is an important thing to realize. At this point, I feel like the word flow has been used multiple times, and I'll probably continue to use it. So, what better way to understand what we mean by flow than hearing it directly from Shinya Kimura, since it's such a fundamental part of his design process.
I don't think I have a great philosophy, but I can say the word I like is flow. When I build a motorcycle, I try to make flow front end to back end or harmony between motorcycle and rider. So always I try to make flow on everything around me.
The reason why I wanted to include that clip was not only to get a sense of what flow means, but so that you guys get an idea of what type of person Shinya is. See, from the get-go, he does say that he doesn't believe he has a great philosophy. And that shows a great amount of humbleness. But not only that, but you kind of also get a sense of what drives him, right? He wants to see a form of flow, but not as a whole that more so ends up being the product. But instead of each individual part from the back to the front, they will harmonize together. By doing one thing, it'll automatically lead to the next. He has no plans. He has no notion of what the motorcycle is going to look at the end. But instead, he knows that by making each part coexist, almost like an ecosystem, he kind of understands that at the end, he will have something that will be beautiful. But he also mentions something interesting: the relationship between the motorcycle and the rider. He also mentions that you hear this from a lot of the people that, end up purchasing one of his, custom motorcycles, that when they get on it, it seems natural. Your body automatically knows where to go, where to put your hands, because they just simply fall there. And that is an attention to detail that not a lot of motorcycles have nowadays. When we look at, Shinya's work as a whole, you're going to realize one thing, and that is that most of the motorcycles he works with are on the older side, usually from the 70s backwards. And that's for good reason. When Shinya decides to make a design, he really starts off with just a frame and an engine. And the thing is that he doesn't necessarily focus on newer engines, because the ones before 1978 tended to have more of a connection between the engine and whoever made it. The processes and manufacturing conditions from earlier than 1978 required more hands-on labor on fitting the engine, assembling it, and putting it in the bike, since automation wasn't a thing yet, per se. Other than just when the engine and the motorcycle that he's using as a canvas was produced, he also likes to ride them before he starts to work on them. And this gives him a notion of what the motorcycle's like. See, not every motorcycle rides the same. Yamaha R1 is not going to ride the same as a Harley Street Glide. They're made completely different with different purposes. But not only that, you can get a sense of the company's background by just riding it. One motorcycle that we're going to touch upon is the BMW R18 and his version, which is the Val. The Val roughly translates from German to whale. And this was because when he wrote it, he realized that this massive motorcycle, a motorcycle which has an engine which sometimes is larger than most cars have in Japan and Europe, because it's a 1.8 liter. It's huge. But when he rides it, he says it's very gentle, docile. And he really used that as a basis of how he was going to build it. When you look at it, you're going to see a lot of elements that kind of give you a sense of, marine life, or even old school steampunk. I don't know if you guys have played BioShock, but that's kind of what comes to mind when I see it. And BioShock is one of those things that takes place in the ocean. And this is on purpose because he wants to have that tie between the sense that he gets when he rides it, the personality of the motorcycle. And then he implements that into the design. He used green, a very, very dark and kind of musty looking green, because that kind of reminds us of depths of the ocean. You look at old scuba gear and it kind of gives that feeling of the depth. Additionally, Shinya Kimura never draws any of these designs. Everything he does is hands-on, spur of the moment, spontaneous. And this is why I think that his motorcycles embody freedom. Because it's not only freedom from when you ride it, but from the time it's being made. There is no plan. He just does it. And that was a very liberating thing for me. Because as a designer, we are taught that, you need to do ideation, and then this, and then that, and then sketches. But he proved to me that that's not everyone's process. My process, for example, now implemented just getting a frame and just sculpting with clay. And that's what worked with me.